for me. Well, I think I'm fine. How about you? About which project? I don't know that I'm familiar with that one. Mm. Right.
Okay, it's 9:30. We can get started, Liz.
Morning, my name is Liz Kukla. I'm the Secretary of the Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm going to read the preamble for you this morning, April 3rd, 2023. In compliance with notification requirements of the city's open meeting law in section 101.021 of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting have the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you use the raise hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raise hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile version and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking on the raise hand icon again and mute your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. Please note that calling users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activity is being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube for public view. We have provided a link to the meeting for those who wish to speak on our particular case via our website and email. All requests to speak on a particular matter have been considered. We have also received emails from those who have provided written comment on a particular matter. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. You can go ahead and call the roll, please.
Thank you. Ms. Roca?
Present.
Ms. Faith?
I am present.
Ms. Brown?
Present.
Ms. Holzer?
Present.
Ms. Britt? Madam Chair, we have a quorum with 5.
Thank you. Do we have any council people, Maurice?
Madam Chair, we do have some postponements to announce first. That
We
would be
do?
all right.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. The first postponement, Madam Chair, is the first item on the agenda. It's calendar number 23-045 regarding 4075 Rocky River Drive. This is regarding CAMS Enterprises LLC. They propose to expand a convenience store to include gas pumps and a canopy. The appellant has requested a postponement and they would request it for a date past April 17th. This is the first request for a postponement, Madam Chair.
What is that? I think it's the second week in May. Do we have?
Yep,
Is
that
that
would
loading?
be May.
Is that loading up?
No, it's fine so far.
Okay.
So May 8th. All right. So calendar number 23-45 has been postponed to May 8th. If you received a letter in the mail, you'll receive a letter again closer to the date. And so therefore there will be no testimony today on that case. So the next case is calendar number 23-026. That's regarding, I'm sorry, I think that's one of the postponed cases. That's regarding 9900 Ostend Avenue. Tamara Washington, owner, proposed to establish use as a residential facility. We did receive a phone call this morning from the councilman. He was on his way out of town for a personal family matter. So he had intended to be here and unfortunately cannot, and therefore is asking for a postponement. And that we could get them back on as quick as possible. This is the second postponement requested by the councilman. We can get them back on as quickly as possible. April 24th would be the soonest date.
Okay.
And just to be sure, is the appellant logged in today?
I am. Good morning.
Hello, I just wanted to make sure that you are hearing this morning. So the new date would be April 24th, assuming again that the board approves that postponement.
April 24th, I am actually traveling back into town that day. Is there any way possible I can push it to the next Monday, whatever the board recommends? That would be fine for me.
Yes, Madam Chair, we do have May 1st available still. It's not loaded up.
Okay, we'll put her on there. Thanks for letting us know,
Okay.
Ms. Jones.
Thank
Okay.
you. Have a good day.
You too.
And then, Madam Chair, there is one that Mr. Riccardi may want to speak to. This is regarding calendar number 23-055 at 2197 East 103rd Street. FMCFP LLC proposed to build a parking lot and a garage. It is my understanding that there's been an update to the notice of nonconformance. And the city, I believe, is withdrawing that, the entire notice of nonconformance at that time. If Mr. Riccardi could confirm.
It's true, a variance is not needed in that case.
Thank you.
Okay. So what case number is this?
That is calendar number 23-055 regarding 2197 East 103rd Street. A variance is no longer required for that case.
Okay, well, that case is dismissed off the agenda.
And that's all that we have as far as postponements and withdrawals this morning.
Well, I'm glad you steered me in that direction. We had a lot there. Okay, thank you. All right. Now, are there any councilmen or council persons on the line today?
I do not see any, Madam Chair. Councilman Slife was here, but he is gone now. His case was postponed, and I don't see anybody else.
Okay, all right, we can start.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Our first case is calendar number 23-046. This is at 2270 Professor Avenue. Stella Maris Inc. proposes to establish use as a drug/alcohol recovery residential facility in a B12 family residential district. The owner appeals for relief from a strict application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances as stated in the agenda and the public record, of which there is one. And with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Brown for the oath.
You might be muted, Ms. Brown, if you're talking.
I'm on mute. Good morning. I was almost done swearing in. Anyways, thank you. I am swearing in all who are present for this case. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Please raise your hand, reply I do, state your name and your address.
I do. Robert Bako, 1250 Old River Road, Cleveland, Ohio.
I do. Daniel Lettenberger Klein, 1320 Washington Avenue, Cleveland, Ohio.
Anyone else for this case?
I do. Father James Roach, 906 College Avenue, St. John Cantius Church.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Chair.
I think Mr. Bowen was trying to speak and was muted.
Okay, thank you for your help. Mr. Bowen? Now you're muted. You were unmuted a moment ago. Try again, sir.
Okay. He just said he has some technical issues, so we'll get back to him if he needs to swear in.
He said he's gonna try to call in. It's in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Madam Chair.
Thank you. History of the property, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This property was originally zoned general retail in 1929. In 1963, it was changed to two-family. In our Records Administration Office, we found that in 1910, a permit was issued to erect a dwelling known as Property for the Sisters Home. It was identified as having 8 rooms, offices. On the second floor, there were 17 bedrooms, and on the third floor, there were 6 bedrooms. And then, Madam Chair, there's a variance in calendar number 76-371. A variance was granted to establish use for alcoholic and rehab facility and to erect an addition. At that time, it was identified that only male residents would be on site. And then in the more recent history, we just see interior alterations regarding electric, plumbing. There's another permit issued for windows. We also see that there were food licenses issued starting in 2005 to present. And that's all that I have that's relevant, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a lag on the screen, or is it just with me? Are we still at the swearing in page?
Yes.
Yeah, we're still at the page, yeah.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, I think we have 2 additional people to swear in.
Okay, we might as well do that now since the page is still up.
Thank you.
I think it's
Do you
fine.
swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Please raise your hand, reply I do, state your name and your address. Mr. Bowen?
Is Mr. Bowen an attorney for the appellant?
He is.
That he
Doesn't
doesn't
need to swear
I
in.
mean, he is an attorney. I'm assuming he's an attorney for the appellant.
Yes.
he doesn't need to swear in then, right?
No,
Right.
he does not.
There's one other person who does.
But we have someone in the chat that wanted to speak.
Looks like a Bruce. His hand is raised, but we can't hear him either. You might want to try calling in, sir, using your phone. You would have gotten the phone numbers in your invite.
Or can you tell him how to unmute?
He looks like he's unmuted.
Yeah, it doesn't. It does. It's not showing that he's muted.
Oh, thank you.
All right, we'll move on till he can check in. We're at legal standard, please.
Madam Chair, members of the board, appellant is requesting a use variance from the requirements of the zoning code. To obtain the use variance, appellant must prove that denying the request will result in an unnecessary hardship particular to the property such that there will be no economically feasible use of the property without the variance, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variance will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code.
Okay, thank you. Who will be the spokesperson for this case?
I can start things off. This is Robert Bako with HSB Architects.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Bako.
Okay, so what you're looking at right here is the submittal that we prepared for the Landmarks Commission a while back, maybe a couple years ago. This project's been underway for a while. And it delineates the scope of work, the objectives of the project. On this cover page, Daniel Lettenberger Klein from the executive director for Stella Maris included that description of the project as far as what it's for, as far as a continuum of care from the Stella Maris main campus for a residential program. And I'll let him speak more to that in a minute. But basically, this building has been sitting idle for, I think, 10 plus years. It was previously it was still called Matt Talbot. And I'll let Father Roach speak to this, but I believe it was to support the recovery for priests addicted to alcohol for a long period of time. So we are looking at repurposing it for our objectives to provide a residential program in the community, which again is basis for the continuum of care for Stella Maris. The Landmarks Commission, we submitted this for, we received approvals. We are doing a significant amount of work to the property, replacing windows, tuck pointing the brick, and complete interior renovation with all new infrastructure and utilities. And then but prior to this, though, we went to Tremont West. We started with them, again, 2.5 years ago or so, and we received overwhelming support for this project. So we were very confident of it of going through. And I guess naively, we thought this was an approved kind of quote unquote grandfathered use for the property because it's been used as a recovery facility for a long period of time. So now we're here in front of you asking for the variance so we can continue what the building was hopefully built for. And I will add one more thing that I've had discussions, in fact, I think Daniel was part of this, with the developers that were looking to convert this building to a market rate housing project, and the economics would not work. So they've had a couple guys look at this project. The building, the way it's situated, the size, the footprint, the utilization of space, there's really not a really good use for it other than what it was built for originally. So we think we are in a perfect position to reuse this property, revitalize it. As you all know, Stella Maris is a longstanding institution in the city. They do things right. And they're very much a part of this process of helping people get to a point in their lives of full recovery. So we are hopeful that you'll support the project as it has been supported by the community, Tremont West, Landmarks Commission. Everybody to this point has really been very supportive and spoken well of the project. So Daniel, I'll let you chime in if you have anything else to say.
Yeah, thank you for having us today. We want to make mention that we also have the support from the mayor's office, county executive's office, Representative Upchurch, and Carrie McCormick, who's been involved since the beginning and really helped us get initial conversations with Tremont West going. The Block Club has reviewed it as well and fully supported it too.
Okay,
Yeah, you can see some of the, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you just kind of tell us a little bit of the ins and outs of what will happen in this place on a daily basis?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So this is just expanding a level of care that we already operate on our campus that started a few years ago, called an inpatient residential treatment program. It operates for people struggling with drugs or alcohol, typically for 30 to 45 days. This is a voluntary facility with psychiatrically and medically stable clients that are doing educational groups every day. It's staffed 24 hours. It has nursing 24 hours. And it would be a clinically intensive level of care fitting into the continuum. And then they'd be relocating following their completion of this level of care to our main campus in the West Flats, where we've been since 1948. So we currently operate it as a 12-bed facility, just so we could make sure that's been open since October of 2020. And so it would really just be scaling the number of beds in the continuum to make sure, because we've had a wait list at this level of care with 12 beds since we opened it.
Great, thank you. Father Roach, was anything that you wanted to add?
Yes, just a couple of thoughts. When that convent was built around 1961, that zone change was not for that building. It was for the house in the back on West 10th Street. The convent, as you know, the religious communities are getting smaller. So there are only 3 nuns left in that building. And so the pastor at that time had the back house that we owned, which Stella Mara purchased from us several years ago, along with the convent. That was the house that was rezoned in 61 to house the 3 nuns. As far as we know, there was never a zone change in 61 on that building. Second of all, that was not operated for clergy. That was operated by Catholic Charities, the building. It was leased from us, and that was not for priests, but it was a drug and alcohol rehab center and residential, and it operated for over 20 years here with little to no incident as far as I know. Been pastor here for 5 years, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I check on that zone on 61. I don't think that's correct.
All right, so we have someone that was trying to call in and needs to be sworn in to speak. Has he connected?
Bruce, are you able to speak? Hello? It shows that you're no longer on mute. Now, well, now I lost. Oh, there it is. Well, I don't hear him, Madam Chair. Are you speaking, sir? Now, go ahead. He is now, but we don't hear him.
His volume might be turned off on his computer if he wants to try that.
Okay, so while he's trying to figure that out, I was gonna ask for, were there any support letters? So this is one from the mayor. Do we have any more?
Madam Chair, yes, we have quite a few more.
Okay. Okay, Adams Board, Care Alliance, okay. 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 All right, well, city planning.
Madam Chair, of course, we have a letter of support from the mayor. Mayor Bibb here supports this project. If you want, I can read through his items, but I mean, this has been this kind of facility, a treatment facility. It sounds like it has a history of being that in this neighborhood, with virtually no incident over all of these years. I agree that I'm glad that the developers have looked at converting this to something else, and it turns out that it just is not economically feasible, and the building is just not appropriate to be converted into market rate housing. And so this is actually the perfect use for this building. We know that Stella Maris is hardly a fly-by-night operation. They've been in operation in the city for many years. They're a very good operator. This is as the mayor has said, this project will involve a full interior restoration and beautification of the exterior of the building and landscaping. The project is financially supported by both the Cuyahoga County Opiate Settlement and the state of Ohio through a capital budget award. I believe the project is an essential step towards a storied treatment center being able to meet the needs of our community in the midst of a devastating and prolonged opiate epidemic. And I think that that really says it all, and we fully support the conversion of this project to a residential facility.
Great, thank you. Well, I think we've heard from everyone. We got all the information up front. We'll try see if Bruce can connect one more time before we move forward.
Madam Chair, this is Liz.
Yes.
He just gave a
He
thumbs up.
did enter some comments or just one comment in the chat that he supports the project.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you, Bruce. Thanks for coming to support, to lend support. We very rarely get that, so thank you. All right, I'll open it up to my board for any questions or comments.
Madam Chair, I do have one question. I'm curious about the building in the back. Is that part of the project? No one's mentioned that other than Father Roach.
Dan, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, at this time, we don't have a plan for that space, so it's not included in this project. We would like to find a way to create additional use for that. We would hope that eventually it could be some sort of housing as a step down in the community, but at this time, our funding really only allows for us to focus on the main building.
So the variance is just for the main building?
Is that right, Bob?
I think it's for the property, wouldn't it be?
Well, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, it would be for the whole property.
Is that how it's written, Madam Chair? Just would like to know what we're voting on.
It's written according to the address, correct, Liz?
Yes, Madam Chair, this would be for the entire address, which would,
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's only involving the one parcel also, unless
Yeah.
they've been consolidated, and I'm not seeing.
The parcels that both houses, the house and the building are consolidated.
Yes, I can confirm that according to our zoning maps, it appears that the parcels have been consolidated.
Okay, well then it's the full.
Correct.
Okay,
Thank you for clarifying.
good question, Ms. Brown. Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I have a question as well. It kind of dovetails off the last question. In the letters of support, it stated there were 35 beds, but I think I heard 12. Are there 12 beds, or how many beds are in the facility?
It will be 35. 12 is what we currently have on our main campus that we'd be expanding into 35.
I see. And that is in the two buildings or just the one building in the front?
That's the one building in the
One building in the front. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Liz again. We could ask Mr. Riccardi if this is would just allow for the occupancy of that front building. Just for the record, I mean, I understand that the variance is for the entire address. However, I think the certificate of occupancy is a little more specific, and that might actually answer the question that Ms. Brown had.
This is Richard Riccardi. What was reviewed and what the variances covers is the plans that are submitted by the applicant. So what's submitted by the applicant it's what's covered by the variance. That's what's going to be reviewed.
I'm sorry, I just have one follow-up question to that, Madam Chair and Mr. Riccardi. So if we approve this variance and the appellant expands the space into the back building, they will not have to come before us again?
I don't believe that the back building was included in the plans, and unless I'm wrong, I don't know if the plans can be put up other than this one, if that's a complete plans, but I mean, you get the variance for what is requested, which is what is covered in the plans. So if there's a whole other building on your property that you didn't include in your plans, your use and your variance isn't going to extend to that in this proceeding or in this permit anyway.
So
Madam Chair,
go ahead.
This is the permit set that I have that is on file.
Yeah, so we do have civil work around. You see that entire parcel is being manipulated or touched, as far as even the back building, around the periphery, the perimeter of that building, the parking is being redone around it. Yeah, we aren't doing any renovations to that building per se in this package, but it definitely is part of the one parcel.
This is Richard Riccardi again. Also, I mean, if there's not going to be any change in that floor plan of that building, if it's going to be the same, I mean, I can't speak for the building code examiners, but I mean, perhaps there's already a permit for that for what you want it to be there already. But I mean, I think you should make it clear today for what you're requesting, if you want the use to extend to that building, and that could be considered. And I guess you could supplement it with floor plans if you want that reviewed also.
I mean, just speaking for Daniel or for Stella Maris, I'd say we want to have that included in the zoning variance. But as he stated, we aren't prepared to submit anything because we're not sure what the long-term plans for that building would be as far as number of rooms, occupants. You know, we've done a myriad of designs for that property. We just haven't landed on anything yet that's a long-term solution.
We would like it extended if that could be issued today.
It's Richard Riccardi. That's something that the Board of Zoning Appeals can certainly include in their resolution, you know, if they like, sure.
Okay, that was the line I was waiting to hear. All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right, any further questions, board? Hearing none, I'll entertain the motion.
All right, Madam Chair, given the testimony that we've heard, the extensive letters of support for this project that have been entered into the file, and the discussion that just was concluded about the scope of the project, I move that we approve calendar number 23-046.
Thank you, and that's with the inclusion of the rear building, correct?
Correct, right, as
Thank
the conversation clarified. Yes.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please?
Madam Chair, I second.
Ms. Roca with the second. Go ahead, call the roll.
Ms. Olzer,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Roca,
Yes.
Ms. Bates,
Yes.
Ms. Britt.
Yes.
Calendar number 23-046 is granted conditionally with the understanding that this this variance will include the overall project area, specifically the rear building. This will be ratified next week, and then we will send the appellant a letter.
Excellent.
Thank you. Good luck with everything.
Thank you very
so
much.
much. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next case.
Our next case is calendar number 23-050. This is at 4145 East 120th Street. Jessica Hill proposes to establish use as residential facility for 5 occupants in a B12 family residential district. The owner appeals for relief from the strict application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances, as stated in the agenda and the public record, of which there are 2. And with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Brown for the oath.
I'm swearing in all who are present for this case. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Please raise your hand. Reply, I do. State your name and your address. Ms. Hill, you're on mute.
Hi, Jessica Hill. Yes, I do.
And your address?
4145 East 120th Street, Cleveland, Ohio, 44105.
Thank you. Anyone else for this case? Madam Chair.
Thank you. History of the property, please.
Madam Chair, there's been no change in the zoning since 1929. In our Records Administration Office, we found that a 2-story dwelling was erected in November of 1918, and there was a garage erected in 1928. There are no variances on file, and in the more recent history, we found that in 2020, a permit was issued to install replacement windows, and that's all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Legal standard, please.
Madam Chair, members of the board, appellant is requesting a use variance and an area variance from the minimum distance requirements of the zoning code. To obtain the use variance, appellant must prove that denying the request will result in an unnecessary hardship, particular to the property, such that there will be no economically feasible use of the property without the variance, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variance will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code. To obtain the area variance, appellant must prove that denying the request will create a practical difficulty not generally shared by other land or buildings in the same district, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variance will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Hill, tell us what you'd like to do.
Okay, good morning. So in this property, not necessarily a 5 occupancy, but a 4 occupancy in the room. I would like to turn it into a group home for the young ladies between the ages of 18 to 20 so that they could continue through the bridge program, get their high school diploma, and it'll continue to keep them on the bus route to the continued education courses that's offered at the schools down there on Broadway, just to give these young ladies a fighting chance to be successful in life.
Okay, can you tell us about your operation? What will actually be happening in the group home? Like, what are the services you'll be providing?
They'll have to continue their education for high school, so they'll have to get their high school credits. They also will be able to go in and someone will be there to help them accomplish getting driver's license and bank accounts and things like that to help them along their way.
And you're looking to have how many young ladies here?
4.
So 4. So there'll be 1 to a room?
Yes.
And for how many employees will you have?
We only need someone to cover the 12-hour shift in the evening. So from 6 p to 6 a.
Because during the day they'll be out.
Correct.
In school or doing the training. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Have you spoken to your neighbors about what you want to do here?
No. I reached out to the councilman. I talked to his secretary. I didn't get a return phone call. I'm not sure how to go about that.
What's the councilman for this area?
Bishop.
Bishop, okay. Have you spoke to the CDC at all?
No.
Okay.
Madam Chair, this is Liz.
Yes.
There is a letter on the screen from Councilman Bishop that states, I do not approve of the residential facility going before the board today on East 120th Street.
Good, because I couldn't read that. Thanks for. Opening that up.
Madam Chair, Maurice, do you have an aerial view, how close this is to what? To neighbors? I believe she talked about the bus line.
It doesn't look like she has any neighbors.
Right.
Right.
Now I see it.
Just across the street, yeah.
Open space here. I can't remember the write-up. Is she in violation? Is that why we're here? For the 1,000?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there's another facility within 1,000 feet, plus it's the use variance as well.
Right.
What do you guys mean by the use variance?
To be able to change your home into a business for the most part, and having unrelated persons living there. So that's the use variance. And then the other is that the city has a rule that if you're within 1,000 feet of another group home, you have to come before the board as well. So it's one on 119th Street. Okay.
Ms. Hill, Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Ms. Hill, do you live in the home?
No,
Is it currently occupied?
not at the moment. It had a tenant in it previously. You know, it's a rough neighborhood. It's pretty rough over there. So to keep a tenant or someone in there and to keep somebody safe, and it's hard. It's a hard task to be able to do. So I'm trying to do my best to figure out what else could we offer in this community. In that community, it's a lot of young ladies outside walking up and down the street with nowhere to go, nothing to do. And they don't have any homes. They're dropping out of high school at a rapid rate. They can't afford rent at that age. They can't. Every building around there is a senior citizen building that occupies elderly. Where are these young ladies going?
Okay. Board, any other questions? I mean, I'm looking in like the surrounding area and I just don't see anything that would be like fully impacted by this use right now. But I'll open it up to the board for any further questions or conversations for Ms. Hill.
Madam Chair, I'm looking at this too, and it's like it's a vast expanse of land, with the exception of the houses that are across the street and what looks like an apartment building, sort of kitty corner to the lower right. And the councilman sent the email, but he's not had any conversation with Miss Hill about this. So, you know, I'm wondering if he's clear on what the scope of the situation is.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
And city planning, I mean, I'm wondering if there are other plans for the area with all this vacant land, if anybody should talk to the nonprofit. You know, obviously Ms. Hill is the owner of her property and she makes her own decisions, but understanding context might be worthwhile.
Oh, we haven't gotten city planning's point of view anyway, so that's a good transition into that. Maurice?
Right.
I agree with Ms. Brown that it probably would be a good idea to talk to the local development corporation or the neighborhood planner for this area and see if there is any plans for all of that vacant land. I hate to go against what the councilman is suggesting here, but it is a very brief letter, not explain it, you know, and it doesn't explain why he is opposed to the residential facility. I guess maybe I would be in favor of a postponement and give the applicant more time to talk to the council person, and I think that's Union Miles Development Corporation, which can also assist with reaching out to the councilman and the community in general, which you know, in this case is going to be the houses across the street, and maybe get a little bit more input before we make a decision. I think that her intended personnel or clients for the house is there's definitely a need for that. We've approved those in other places that were what may be a little bit more appropriate areas, but it's definitely a group of people that are definitely in need of the service. So, you know, that we support. I just would rather have a little bit more feedback from the councilman and maybe the local development corporation before we make a recommendation for approval.
Maurice, who's the planner for this area?
You know what? We're kind of in between right now, so I'm not 100% sure, but I can get that information to the applicant.
Yeah, I think if Ms. Hill.
I think this was Marka Fields, but she's now the assistant.
Yeah.
She's now the assistant director. And we are in the process of some new people starting actually, I think next week. So it still might be Marka Fields, but I can forward this to Marka Fields and see if she can follow up.
Okay. All right, so Ms. Hill, we just need a little bit more due diligence on the area first. But as you can see, no one is fully against what you're trying to do. We just want to make sure that we have all the information in front of us. So Liz, can you give me a postponement date? And it'll be enough time for city planning to find out who's actually gonna help Ms. Hill connect with Union Miles, as well as the council person, so she can just have all that done.
So May 1st is pretty full. May 8th is getting there. So the next week would be May 15th or May 22nd.
I think, Liz, May 22nd is the date we were.
Yeah, that's
Correct.
Oh, thank you. Right.
Yeah, I was
Sorry.
gonna say, that's what I was gonna say, the 15th. We'll put her on for the 15th. Ms. Hill, will you be available that day?
Yes, I'm available.
Okay, so we'll put you on for May 15th. And then hopefully you can talk to everyone you need to talk to about this, and then we'll see you there, okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next case.
Just 22-219, FEB Inc. is appealing the decision of the Director of the Office of Equal Opportunity. FEB Inc. appeals under the authority of Section 76-6 of the Charter of the City of Cleveland, Sections 329.02D and 188.05D of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances from the decision of the Director of the Office of Equal Opportunity on November 3rd, 2022, to uphold penalty assessments to FEB Inc. for the Trailside 2 and Trailside 3 projects. Again, this case was filed on November 17th, 2022, and postponed from February 6th at the request of the appellant due to a scheduling conflict. It was again postponed from March 13th to allow for a full complement of board members. No testimony was taken at that time. And with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Brown for the oath.
Thank you. I'm swearing in all who are present for this case. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Please raise your hand, reply I do, state your name and your address.
I do. Gillian Hall, 7555 Friedel Drive, Suite 210, Concord, Ohio, 44077.
I do. Joe Whitman, 7555 Friedel Drive, Suite 210.
Sorry, can you repeat your name again?
Joe Whitman.
Joe Whitman. Okay, thanks.
Matthew Yorkovich, 1549 Hamilton, Cleveland, Ohio.
I do. Chris Alvarado, Slavic Village Development, 5620 Broadway Avenue, Cleveland, 44127.
Anyone else for this case? Please be sworn in.
Sharon Posner, 7007 Broadway Avenue, Cleveland, Ohio, 3rd Federal.
I'm Jason Schachner. I'm just here on behalf of OEO as a System Law Director attorney.
I was wondering if someone from the city is here. Okay.
We also have Director Tyson Mitchell here from OEO.
Tyson Mitchell, I do.
And we also have Michael Curry from OEO. He had to step out for a meeting, but he should be here when the time is appropriate.
Is he an attorney?
No, but we'll have him swear in if necessary.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Legal standard, please.
Madam Chair, members of the board, appellant is appealing an administrative decision of the Director of the Office of Equal Opportunity. The standard of review to be applied is whether the administrative decision was illegal, arbitrary, capricious, unreasonable, or unsupported by the preponderance of substantial, reliable, and probative evidence. If the appellant fails to meet this burden, the administrative decision must be affirmed.
Yeah. Okay, who will be the spokesperson for this case?
I'm gonna be starting. There's gonna be a few of us talking though.
Okay, thanks, Gillian. So whenever you, just for anyone, since you're all in the room together, before you speak, just say who you are for the recorder.
No problem.
All
My
right,
name
go
is
ahead.
My name is Gillian Hall. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Kenez Homes. I'm here with our in-house counsel, Joe Whitman, and our outside counsel, Matt Yorkovich. And we are here today to ask that you reverse the administrative decision to uphold penalties that were assessed against us for the Trailside Phase 2 and Phase 3 project, because we feel that we presented plenty of evidence to support that the city created barriers to our ability to comply with Chapter 187 and 188. We feel that we were told the penalties would not be enforced because of our good faith effort to comply with them. And then later, 3 years after the completion of construction, we were issued a penalty letter. And lastly, we feel that Chapter 188 is unenforceable by law pursuant to the Ohio Supreme Court decision. So I'm just going to kind of start off and give you a little overview of the Trailside project itself. The purpose of this project is to stabilize and revitalize Slavic Village. This has been a partnership that we've had with Third Federal, who obtained this property from the land bank several years ago. Third Federal had another builder start the first phases, and ever since then, we've been involved. We build about 5 houses at a time, and our number one goal is to keep the homes at an affordable rate. So Third Federal puts in subsidy. We ask for subsidy from the city of Cleveland. Third Federal not only subsidizes the construction of the homes, but they also provide $10,000 in down payment assistance. They waive closing costs, and they do a lot to maintain the development so there aren't HOA fees for the customers. So in the phases that we're referring to, Phase 2 and Phase 3, the homes were offered for sale at $149,900 and $159,999 and $158,999 respectively between the 2 phases. So we're trying to keep these units very affordable for future residents. That's just to give you a little bit of a history of the project itself, and to go into a little bit of a timeline to give you some perspective on this. Phase 2 construction started in October of 2018, and it was completed in May of 2019. During that time, our compliance was to be tracked on the B2G Now portal, and that portal was not open until March of 2019. And the contract for the grant money was not entered into until November of 2019. So when we were in the process of constructing the units, the trades were not set up to be able to go onto the system and update their reporting because the portal wasn't open and there was no contract for the project. So it made it very difficult for us to require our trades to go on when there wasn't anything to go on and report to. Subsequently, when we started Phase 3 of construction, and we started in December of 2019, we ended in August of 2020. Obviously, we started right before COVID hit, which made things a little bit chaotic, but that portal was open in February of 2020. Obviously, the following month, COVID started, and this contract with the city for the grant money was not entered into until May of 2020, which is almost when construction was completed. So it's just a repeated history. We're now in phase We just completed phase 5. We're under construction on phase 6, but it just seems to be a common theme that the portals aren't open in a timely basis and the contracts aren't entered into, which makes it very difficult for us to have our trades backtrack months behind to go enter in their payrolls. And it's hard for us to enforce because of the time lags that we're experiencing.
So Gillian, I have a quick question for you. So the portal, meaning that you as the builder go in to find minority contracts or what is the portal?
The portal is where each of our trades have to go on and report their payrolls so that the city can determine whether they are certified MBE and like what percentage of their payroll will count towards those requirements.
Okay.
And I feel like it's hard enough as it is at times to get trades. You know, some trades have more technological capabilities than others. I mean, it seems to be a daunting task for certain people. Obviously, certain trades, like we work with Carter Lumber, it's a national company. They have plenty of staff, and they seem to have sometimes trouble getting onto this portal, let alone the electrician whose wife is the bookkeeper and maybe has like 2 guys in the field. I mean, so we work with a variety of people, and this portal seems to be somewhat difficult for people to maneuver their way around and actually administer their payroll. Not to mention, it's never open before we start construction. So it just makes it very difficult for everyone in this process. And the other issue that we've been having is throughout this entire, it's been what, 4 years at this point, we've been going back and forth. We've received emails from Jeremiah. I know there's a ton of information and emails that were presented to you, but throughout our slideshow, we have some emails from the city of Cleveland telling us that they felt that we made a good faith effort to comply with Chapter 187. And then we were subsequently told that we did not and were issued a penalty letter. So we just received conflicting information from the city, which has obviously confused us and confused our ability to move forward, because we did obtain, you know, we went to job fairs. We sent out emails to every single contractor that was listed, and we only received 4 responses from them. You know, we have had a luncheon with the Famicos Foundation and their landscape club. We've done a ton of outreach and efforts we made to hire MBE, FBE, and CSB contractors. We've asked the city if they could help us with that because we seem to not be getting a ton of response when we send out bid letters. We haven't really received much help or assistance on their end with that. So it's just, we're doing everything we possibly can. And we've requested and asked for help from the city, and we just don't seem to be getting it because we feel like this should be a collaboration and not just pushed off to the developers to figure out. But we're doing our best that we can here and feel like we've made every effort to comply with all the provisions. And we feel like we fell short in this instance, you know, one, because we couldn't actually have our trades report. And 2, I feel like our outreach didn't garner a lot of trades that were certified.
So the certified trade people that you did have were having a difficulty reporting, but you did have them. Is that your testimony?
We did have some, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And can you just highlight here, because I can't, this lettering is very small. Can you just kind of slide this up now?
Yeah, absolutely. This slide is trades that we had reached out to And for one reason or another, we're not able to, we either didn't get a response from them or they never returned their paperwork. We had some issues with people not agreeing to our payment terms. So we just kind of tried to document what are the issues that we had in moving forward with meeting these requirements. A lot of times too, the trades can't meet the budget. And this project is very budget sensitive, as I said, because we're trying to sell these houses at an affordable rate. Some of these contractors are way, way out of scale because I think a lot of them are used to participating in larger commercial jobs. And these are just 5 single-family homes. So which made it very difficult. So we just tried to document all of that so that we could turn it over to the city to show what our efforts were. Does that help to answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. You can go
You're
ahead.
welcome. Sure. So I think that's pretty much, you know, just a high level overview. As you can see, like, I mean, we documented this the best we could and tried to submit evidence to show that we've been trying this whole time, and for one reason or another, you know, we're not able to comply with these requirements. We submitted, once we received our penalty letter, we requested an appeal of chapter 188 and 187. We had a hearing and we submitted all of this evidence. And for some reason or another, we only received a response back on chapter 188. Our request for an appeal on chapter 187 has not been addressed at all. And this has been going on since July of 2022. So we're a little confused about that as well. It just seems like we're not able to get to a point of closure on any of this. And I think the last thing that I'm going to turn it over to Matt to talk about is we feel that chapter 188 is just not enforceable in light of the Supreme Court decision. And Matt's going to go a little bit more into that.
Yeah, Matthew Yorkovich. I'll just say that as a follow-up to what Gillian had said, you know, at the time of the entering into this contract with the city, the project had already begun. At that time, there was pending litigation, Cleveland versus State of Ohio, 2019-Ohio 3820, which struck down the Fannie Lewis law as in violation and contradiction to Ohio Revised Code section 9.75. We believe Ohio Revised Code section 9.75 effectively prescribes the mandates of the Fannie Lewis law and codified ordinance 188, thereby making any penalties under this code section illegal or satisfying the definition of arbitrary, capricious, or unreasonable. That decision was issued on September 24th, 2019, during the time of these contracts, which made the compliance expectations very elusive as to whether or not they would be held or not. We also believe the city has historically not enforced penalties under section 188, and to do so now under these circumstances for a project that was taking place during the COVID-19 pandemic, which made, you know, access to any contractors or construction projects, you know, very difficult, very impractical to complete. Another reason that we believe any penalty issued under this code section would be, you know, capricious at this time. We believe the city's attempts to exercise discretion to issue penalties under 188 is just an attempt to get around the state law and the Supreme Court's decision in Cleveland versus the State of Ohio. They've really never given us an answer as to why that is, and why, you know, that case or that code section, Ohio Revised Code section, doesn't apply here. We believe the construction contract definition under section 188, as well as the project here, does satisfy the definition of public improvement under revised code section 9.75. And for those reasons, we believe that, you know, the decision to issue a penalty on this project is arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable.
And I just wanted to add one more thing with specifically the code. The way the code was set up, this project could have been set up with individual contracts per house to award the $50,000. And in that instance, these requirements would not have existed. But the city chose to lump it all together as one to require us to have to hit these requirements. So I just wanted to point that out. And in phase 6, I just wanted to say for phase 6, we went with the Cuyahoga County Land Bank grant, which does not require us to hire MBE, FBE, or CSB, but we are doing it on our own anyways, because we feel it's important, and that's something that I know the city wants. So we are focusing and have been doing that even though we aren't required to on trail side.
And we believe the issuing a penalty to Knez at this time.
Remember, you guys remember to say who you are before you speak.
Sorry.
Please.
Matthew Yorkovich. We also believe that the issuance of a penalty is a poor exercise of discretion because it fails to recognize the city's own obligations as it relates to these code sections in terms of identifying eligible trades for the contractors to use and working with the trades, their ability to use the portals. And so in the absence of those available contractors on the registry, you know, the construction companies are forced to identify their own trades, try to get those trades to submit to the portal, try to get those trades to certify for the city. And despite some of them being qualified to do so, the great majority are unwilling to register with the city because of the burdens and obligations. So the city just doesn't have enough, you know, eligible trades on the portal, you know, within the system that are actively willing to participate in some of these projects.
Anything else from your side?
Not at the current moment. Sharon, did you want to speak?
Yes, this is Sharon Posner. I'm from Third Federal. FBE is a subsidiary of Third Federal. I just wanted to provide a little more context on why we started this project and what it means to the community and why we went with Knez. Trailside was a brownfield remediation. It was a partnership with the City of Cleveland, the EPA, and Third Federal. It has been an investment, a private investment from Third Federal of over millions of dollars that we will never recoup. It is a revitalization program for Slavic Village, which was ground zero of the housing crisis. Prior to, as Gillian said, prior to involving Knez, we had another builder. It was not a great experience. We spent a year and a half interviewing builders and getting references. We've interviewed over 10. When we spoke with Knez, we had a very, very real conversation about what this development was meant to be. This development was to bring people into the Slavic Village community, to revitalize it, but also to offer low to moderate income folks the opportunity to actually own brand new construction. The exact same construction that's being built in south of Lorraine, Tremont, those areas. We knew that we would not be able to sell those houses for what they're selling in those neighborhoods. Knez agreed to lower profit margins and to work with us to keep the costs down. We at FBE lose a minimum of $50,000 per house. That's a minimum. Then when we got into COVID and after COVID, we lose up to $80,000 per house. That includes the city money. We have an 80% LMI community. It's extremely diverse. We have room for 80 houses. We will have 35 complete by the end of this year. The highest cost for a house right now is $179 on a house that costs us almost $300,000 to build now. So you can do the math. Without subsidies from the city, this project is almost impossible. It still takes quite a bit of private investment from Third Federal, but if the city has no skin in the game in revitalizing their own communities, it's very difficult for us. We have spent years trying to conform to what the city has required, even when we weren't even clear what the requirements would be. As Gillian mentioned, they're doing a great job now. Phase 5, they've done an excellent job of getting minority contractors to register and input into the portal. Phase 6, the same thing is happening. We are now in planning phases for phase 7 and 8. We have a waiting list of 15 people trying to get into these homes. But if the money is going to get taken back, the money from 2018, when we had no opportunity to comply because the portals weren't even open, that is not a great message to take back to the people funding this project. And I will also note that working with Kenez, I have heard from people within the city itself tell me nobody is going to build that house for less money than Kenez has done. They have kept their costs down for us on every phase, even though, of course, housing prices have increased. We have never, in 4 phases with them, going on 4 phases with them, we've never had a single change order. And for those of you that aren't familiar with what that means, they have never come back and said, oops, this is actually going to cost you a little bit more than we thought. This is when we contract a year and a half out. They have absorbed any differences because of their own commitment to this project. This project, and I would turn it over to Chris Alvarado from Slavic Village, has helped raise appraisal values in the entire community and has brought new people into the neighborhood. It's a commitment from Third Federal. It's a commitment from Kenez. It is a project unlike any other that the city of Cleveland has undertaken at this point. And I hope you will consider not penalizing us for trying to do the right thing in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alvarado?
Chris Alvarado, Slavic Village Development. They actually covered much of what I was going to say. We are in full support of both Kenez Builders and Third Federal with regard to their request before this board. I can just, speaking as the person who's been coordinating, coordination team between council members and Third Federal and the builders, I can certainly say that they have made every effort possible to meet the requirements that are for the city. I understand, whatever frustration that there may be, but they have been working very hard on this. I'm sure what else I can have to offer other than my support here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Gillian, does that wrap up everyone on your side?
Yeah, I would say if there's any other comments from the city that we would ask to respond to them, but I feel that we've presented the information that we wanted to.
Okay, Mr. Schechner or whomever from the city wants to rebut.
I'll start. Thank you very much. So the OEO did hold a hearing regarding Chapter 188. They did receive information as presented today on both Chapter 187 and Chapter 188 penalties. I would just say from the start, as the appellant stated earlier, that really no decision was made on Chapter 187, and it wasn't OEO's intent to rule on Chapter 187. That falls under the Community Development Department's purview. So at this point, if that penalty was ever to be enforced on Chapter 187, that is not ripe for discussion today because, in fact, there was no appeal was heard. And that's a whole nother can of worms, but that is on the Chapter 187. So I'm going to discuss Chapter 188, and I'll first address the case cited, which is City of Cleveland v. State. And appellant did correctly state that that has to do with public improvement contracts, that Chapter 188 would be unenforceable in relation to public improvement contracts. I would state that this is not a public improvement contract. This was a community development grant that helped close a gap in financing of $160,000 and I believe $200,000. $200,000 for Trailside 2 and $160,000 for Trailside 3. So they weren't building anything or constructing anything on behalf of a public authority, the city. This wasn't a contract to build something. This was providing a grant of money, and in return of providing that grant of money, the city puts conditions on it. One of those conditions was compliance with Chapter 188. Now, in terms of whether the decision was capricious, I would say no, it wasn't. It was we heard everything that we heard today, and the findings of OEO was that only 3 total resident hours were reported on Trailside 2, and none were reported on Trailside 3, despite that the portals were eventually open for input in there. And that's would be a reasonable decision from the director of OEO, that because only 3 hours on Trailside 2 and none on Trailside 3, that they did not reach the requirements, not only just in Chapter 188 generally, but in the contract agreement in order to receive the funds to close the financing gap. If there's any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And more technical questions, I would refer to either Director Mitchell or Michael Curry, who is now on the line, but he would have to be sworn in, of course, prior to answering.
Okay, just trying to wrap my head around this. All right, so yeah, so technically we are just here for the decision made for Chapter 188 because as you testified, 187, there has not been a decision yet. So your testimony is that the appellants only reported a minimal amount of hours on the phases. And can you tell me, and this might be for Director Mitchell, I don't know, what is a general idea of like how many hours should be reported on a project like this?
I would defer to Director Mitchell.
Okay, this is Tyson Mitchell. I'm gonna defer to Michael Curry. Let's get him sworn in if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Curry, we're gonna swear you in. Go ahead, Ms. Brown.
Mr. Curry, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Raise your hand, reply, I do. State your name and your address, please.
Michael Curry, I do. My address, my home address or my work address?
Work is fine, sir.
601 Lakeside Avenue, room 335, Cleveland, Ohio, 44114.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Curry, can you answer my question?
I'm actually trying to pull up as we speak, but essentially, given the number of units and the the amount of construction necessary, not construction and construction worker hours necessary, we believe that the number reported for Trailside 2 and 3 is significantly below what was expected. For Trailside 3, we have 0 hours reported, so we have no hours reported for Trailside 3. So whatever it is, it's a 0 out of whatever the total might have been. I know that we've had additional reporting for additional phases of the project. I could pull that up quickly here to try to give us an idea of what exactly the other elements of the Trailside, if they have been reported, have been showing to date. But the short answer is we know that it's significantly less than what we would expect for the scope of these projects. But in terms of exactly what the number of hours should have been, I don't know.
Basically, it would be under the statute, of course, ordinance. It would be 20% of the total construction workers' hours performed on the contract.
Okay, let Mr. Shackner just make sure you say who you are before you start
Oh,
talking.
sorry, Jason Shatner, Cleveland. So section 188.02 A1 says it's required that one or more residents perform at least 20% of total construction worker hours performed under the construction contract. Again, this is not a construction contract between the city and Kinez or FEB. This is, again, a grant money. And also require contractor and its subcontractors to use significant efforts to ensure that no less than 4% of the resident construction worker hours required by the division are performed by low-income persons. So neither were performed here, or those met.
Okay,
There
so
were
is there
just for the number of hours. I'm sorry. There was 3,438 hours in Trailside 2. So 20% of 3,438 would be like 700, about a little less than 700 hours on Trailside 3. We're looking at the total of, I don't have that total number of hours in my documents for that, but that's just on Trailside 2 gives you an idea of that.
okay? And so you made a distinction between. So are you saying the grant money has different regulations or guidelines per se versus what 188 is saying?
Well, yes,
I think you got me confused.
Sorry, in Cleveland v. State is talking about the revised code section 9.75, which is prohibitions regarding contractor employment of individual geographic areas. Now that statute is narrowed to public improvement contracts, and public improvement contracts are contracts between the city and contractors for like road, bridges, highways, streets, tunnels, things like that. But also there's a section D, subsection D, which is any structure or work constructed by a public authority or by another person on behalf of the public authority pursuant to a contract. The Kinez is not building anything on behalf of the city. What the city did was provide some funding to fill a gap in financing.
Okay.
And with that,
that kind of clears that up.
Yeah,
go ahead.
with that financing, we had some requirements, conditions to it. Those conditions included complying with those same requirements that we have in our 188.
Matthew Yorkovich, may I ask a question here?
Yes, go ahead.
Just to correct the record, I believe he stated that this was not a construction contract with the city of Cleveland. Is that accurate? It's not a construction contract as defined by Cleveland Codified Ordinance 188.01B?
.18801B. It may be a construction contract in terms of the city's definitions, but if we're looking at under 9.75, what a public improvement is, it's not a public improvement. The Kinez is not building anything. Although our construction contract definition in terms of 188 is broader than what is included in 9.75. 9.75 is narrower in terms of what a public improvement is. And that would be us asking them, Kinez, to build these houses on behalf of the city, which was not the case.
And so that's where you're saying that we're a construction contract with the city, but not we're not constructing any structure, or we're constructed by another person on behalf of a public authority pursuant to the contract. So this construction didn't take place pursuant to the contract with the city of Cleveland?
I would say no. We provided, the city provided grant funds to assist with Kinez's private project.
And is there a contract between the city of Cleveland and the authorities that built this?
There is a contract in order to receive the funds. Yes.
Okay.
I would just say that,
Hold
you
on
know,
1 second, Mr. Yurkovich. I want to make sure that the city of Cleveland has put forth their whole case, as I gave you a chance to do as well. So Mr. Schachner, is anyone else from the city that wants to speak on this?
I have nothing further unless Director Mitchell or Mr. Curry have anything to add.
Mike, would you like to add some more stuff?
The only thing I would add is simply that from an Office of Equal Opportunity perspective, this agreement, the loan agreement, had a condition that Kinez, in addition to all the other benefits they were providing as part of this project, and this includes FEB, would use Cleveland residents as a condition of the city of Cleveland's investment in this project. And based upon the reporting submitted by Kinez over the course of the contract, very, very, very limited number of Cleveland residents were used in execution of this contract. And that was a fundamental component of the city of Cleveland's investment. From an Office of Equal Opportunity perspective, our responsibility is recording the use of those residents and then enforcing a penalty if those residents are not used. And that's what we've done in this instance.
And at one.
So the penalty was on what phases? 2 and 3?
2 and 3.
Right.
Okay. Yes, Madam Chair. And Madam Chair, only thing I want to say is Tyson Mitchell is that even during the hearing, the appeals hearing, we gave them the opportunity, with the system being down at some point periodically during this whole project, we gave them the opportunity to state whether they believed they had enough residents on the projects to even hear this information afterwards so that we could potentially enter that information. They could not aver to that they had enough residents to work on the project. The main argument seems to be that the system was down and now their contractors are gone and they can't put any hours in. So therefore, we need to waive the penalty. Not that they would have made the penalty. Not that they would have made the resident hours.
Okay. Anyone else?
Go ahead. I just want to say during phase 3, that was construction during the pandemic. So we did
say who you are, Gillian.
Oh, Gillian Hall, sorry, with Kinez. For phase 3, we had no reporting. That portal opened during the pandemic, and obviously things were chaotic starting out, and it was very difficult to get people to report, let alone show up on the jobs or bring supplies to the job. So I feel like adding on the hecticness of the pandemic and trying to build through it is trying to force these trades to also report. It was just chaos. And so that was one of the reasons we asked for abatement of the penalty for phase 3 also, is because of the pandemic.
And this is Matthew Yorkovich. I just direct a question to the city. Could they please tell us any other residential construction project in the city of Cleveland that's received these penalties over the past 5 years under Section 188?
Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, we can provide that. We can provide that. We can pull it up right now. It would take me a few minutes. We can, provide that after the fact as well. But yes, the city of Cleveland and the Office of Equal Opportunity have consistently enforced these penalties applied to projects where they failed to meet the resident requirement. We've done that every year. We've done it this year already. So we have done that consistently.
Were any of those projects residential home construction?
I'd have to review the records and drawing the distinction between residential versus commercial. I would say yes, but I'd have to review the record consistently when we're talking about residential. If we're talking about small family homes, or one or two family homes versus large scale development, I don't know, but we can review that information and submit.
Also, my question is, so the penalties were assessed on behalf of 188, but not what the guidelines are for what the grant money is. So, or does the grant money guidelines fall under the 188? Because that's the one thing I still need a little bit of clarity on.
To the chair, Jason Schachner, the city, in the agreement, do cite to chapter 188 as the for the definitions and purposes and things like that.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily that it's just because 188 exists, we did that. I suspect that even if 188 didn't exist, that there would have been provisions in the contract that have identical language as to 188.
Okay, thank you. Kenez, any further
Yeah, this is Gillian.
clarifications?
Yeah, and this is more for the record. We did direct our chapter 187 to community development in addition to OEO. So I just wanted to put that out there for the record that it was requested.
Yeah, this is Matthew Yorkovich. The reason that's important is our notice of penalty letter identified both penalties under section 187 and section 188. It's very confusing to us why one of them is being addressed and one of them's not. But another big reason why we feel that the decision was arbitrary is because the notice of penalty letter only came after repeated requests by Kenez for closure on the project. And the penalty letter actually came 2 years after the completion of phase 2, or 2 years after the completion of phase 3. And the penalty letter came 3 years after the completion of phase 2, only after they requested, closure on those projects. And to receive a penalty so many years after the project was completed and closed out, we believe is capricious.
Okay. Yeah, so, okay, question for Kenez though. If you're waiting on what the decision for 187 is, why bring the appeal on 188 now?
Gillian Hall, we didn't want to lose our appellate rights.
This is Matthew Yorkovich. As you can see by the answer of how many hours required, this has been a moving target for Kenez all along to try to satisfy this. As you can see by these emails, there was quite a bit of confusion this whole time between the city of Cleveland and the parties to this contract. How do we satisfy it? What is required to be satisfied? And even in this, issuing a penalty letter identifying penalties under 188 and 187, we appealed to both of those. We're only given an informal appeal as it related to 188, but we're never really explained why we weren't given that appeal right as to 187. And so, filed this attempting to cover both of them for those purposes. It's still very confusing to us as to how we're being treated and why we're being treated under these circumstances.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to my board for questions, but I do want to say that we didn't have a case similar to this as far as what the appeal was, but it was the fact that the city, I guess just the city is starting to look at different ways to figure out where they can enforce penalties kind of after the fact here. We starting to get appeals about that. And from our last case, it just seemed like that the appellant in the city had a communication breakdown and an appeal was made and brought to us really before everything was kind of worked out. So I'm kind of feeling like we're going in that direction here. So I just wanted to state that for the record, but I will open it up to my board for questions now. Board.
Madam Chair, I have many questions. So I would like the city to respond to this one. What type of contracts did the city enter into with Kinez? Is this a loan agreement, a grant agreement, a construction contract? That is currently unclear to me. And subsequent question to that, are there damages provisions in that contract, or is the penalty for non-performance the code section 188 or chapter 188?
Okay, to the chair to answer the question. So the agreement is a single family construction gap and home buyer system program community development grant agreement. So, however, as Mr. Yorkovich did point out, under the definitions in the city on 188.01 defines a construction contract includes some development grants and that are more than $100,000 and things like that. However, that definition is more to simplify, instead of having 3 or 4 different definition sections of what applies, they just we're going to call everything a construction contract just for ease of understanding of the 188 itself. Now, I'd have to quickly look through the contract to see if there's any penalty provisions besides one. I would say that the contract does restate section 188 in its entirety in the contract itself, which has a violation penalty section that the penalty shall be 1/8 of the 1% of the final total amount of the contract for each full percentage point by which grantee has fallen short of the percentage required by this agreement.
So it sounds like, Mr.
Sorry,
Hacker, the enforcement mechanism, sorry to cut you off, but you don't have to read the whole
right.
Language there. So it sounds like the enforcement mechanism for the city under the contract is the penalty provision in chapter 188.
Correct. Restated into the contract itself.
And this is Gillian. I just wanted to clarify, our penalty letter specifically references a contract number and recites chapter 187 and 188, not a damages provision from the contract.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that.
And it is in like the lower slides. If you go all the way to the bottom, I believe our penalty letter is in our exhibits.
Okay, and then with respect to the Ohio Supreme Court case, which I am quite familiar with that holding, the city's position is, although this is a construction contract under the provisions of chapter 188, it is not a public improvement project as defined or espoused in the Supreme Court case, and therefore the Ohio Supreme Court case does not apply. Is that the city's argument?
Yes, that it is not a public improvement contract as to ORC 9.75. But for purposes, like you said, I hate that I'm restating this to what you just said to me and saying it back to you, but under chapter 188, in terms of what a construction contract is, in terms of whether these things apply and at what level of money to do the provisions apply, it's considered a construction contract under 188 of our Cleveland codified ordinances.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that the record is clear, so that's why I'm having you restate these items, and so I understand as well. And then I just want to also move on to one other issue. The appellant's argument that the city system made it impossible or impractical, the portal that is, for them to report their hours. And then they subsequently allege that the penalty letters came too late, that the project was already done by the time they knew there was something wrong. If the city had sent the penalty letters earlier during the project time, while the project was the phases were happening, would the appellant have been able to remedy this issue of hours? Would they have been able to get the hours they needed under the code?
Is Gillian Hall, I think it would have been much easier to get our contractors to go in and register their time had we been timely notified. But to be able to ask us to go back from 3 years ago and try to get them to input this data is impractical.
And so, Ms. Hall, is it that the hours don't exist, or is it the hours cannot be reported retroactively?
They can't be reported retroactively.
Can the city respond to that?
I would have Mr. Curry or Director Mitchell respond to that in terms of what was presented at the initial hearing where the decision was made.
This is Michael Curry. Essentially, we did provide, we believe that we made it clear that we provided Kenez with ample opportunity to come up with alternative methods to record the total number of construction hours, the resident construction hours, and the low-income Cleveland resident construction hours on the contract. It is our determination that regardless of the reporting mechanism, that there were not sufficient Cleveland residents used on the project, and that the reason why we have not gotten additional documentation of the use of those residents through any other method is because there were not actually Cleveland residents used on the project. If Kenez was able to provide us with a reliable method of determining the total construction hours, the resident hours, and the low-income worker hours, the Office of Equal Opportunity would have been willing to review that information. We have done that on other projects as well. Again, in this particular instance, based upon the information that was submitted throughout conversations between the parties, we don't have any reason to believe that there were Cleveland residents used on this project.
Thank you, Mr. Curry.
Can I respond to that? This is Gillian again. One thing is that we were repeatedly told by Jeremiah Triplett that we were not going to be assessed a penalty right after the project. So we didn't think that there would be a need to try to put that information together. And then 2 or 3 years later, we're being told that they want that information. And it is difficult with our contractors to go and recover that information. So that is what we've said this entire time. So I just wanted to make sure you understood that.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question to that comment?
Yes.
So, Ms. Hall, you had a contract with the city that required reporting. The city's portal was not working. Did you not think you needed to track the information some other way? And did Mr. Jeremiah tell you, don't worry, you don't have to track it?
I don't recall that he told us, don't worry, you don't need to track it. But just from a liability perspective, we don't feel that it's appropriate for us to collect the payroll information on our trades and report it to the city. There's a level of impropriety in that, we feel. And
I don't understand that. You were responsible for it being reported to the city, right?
The trades themselves report. We do not report their hours.
Okay. Who was the contract with that requires the 188 requirements?
It's a contract between the city and Third Federal.
And Third Federal then has a contract with you?
Correct.
To perform what they were supposed to perform?
To build the homes.
No. To do the reporting, the 188.
Correct.
And then you then have a contract with the contractors to submit it?
Correct.
And so when the portal didn't work, what did you say to your contractors on how to document the performance?
We provided them with all of the requirements that the city would need and asked that they, maintain their records. And we also, as you could see through emails, had reached out between us and Sharon, had reached out to Jeremiah to try to get the portal open.
Yeah, I'm just saying, when we didn't have spreadsheets and portals, how did we report? Somebody has to make sure that the information is reported. So I have one more question. If somehow the city is telling us that there was 3,438 hours performed, something was reported to calculate those numbers. How then do we not have any reporting for city resident work hours performed? That's really the crux of my question.
You mean for phase 2?
For where you don't have it.
I would just say-
discussing something, why don't we have it?
It was because of the delay in getting the portals open, so trades never went in to submit their payrolls. So we did hire Cleveland residents, but we weren't able to provide the data to the city. And if you look at our reporting now, we do have that data, and you can see our percentages of Cleveland resident hire is where it needs to be. So, I couldn't tell you back in 2018 and 2019 what percentage we would have hit, but we definitely had hired Cleveland residents, but we just don't have the data to support that. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I don't understand why you don't have it though.
Because our trades didn't provide their payroll information. We'd have to go back.
Well, where did the 3,438 hours come from?
That was because the portals opened towards the end of construction. It opened 5 months after construction started. So we were able to get some people to go in and log on. It was probably most likely our finished trades that did that. But anyone who was already out of the house did not go back or were not willing to go back and enter their payroll.
Thank you for your response.
Sure.
Ms. Roca, you said you had several. Did you have more?
Well, I guess a follow-up to that. So, Ms. Hall, are you saying that you did, in fact, that Connez met the hour requirement, but it just wasn't able to provide those hours to the city in the timely manner?
I can't say that we would have met them. I'm just trying to compare the data we have today versus then. We did use a lot of the similar trades, not 100% matched, but we used a lot of the same trades. I don't know what the data would have shown, but it would have been more than what was reported.
Right. And then I just want to hear from the city on this allegation that the portal doesn't work or didn't work. Did the city provide a mechanism or does the city provide a mechanism for contractors to the trades to submit their hours in any other fashion?
This is Michael.
Go ahead.
This is Michael Curry. So, as I was saying earlier, the short answer is yes. Our first preference is to receive our documentation of use residents through certified payroll reports. That's what's described in the ordinance. It's that method or a method as acceptable to the director. So we start with hey, we want certified payroll reports from everybody. If we can't get them, then we start looking for alternative ways to measure the total construction hours, the resident hours, the low income hours for that particular subcontractor. So we are trying to be firm in terms of our reporting requirements so that we have a consistent, reliable method for collecting the data. But when we fail at that, when we don't have access to those certified payroll reports, we then look to alternate methods to determine those construction worker hours. And that's how we do it, yes. And admittedly, the scope of these projects, when they occur, working with contractors over a long period of time that come in and out of projects. It is difficult for us, for our contractors, for everybody involved to gather that reporting, operating in a challenging system. And obviously, if we throw the COVID pandemic into that, that creates additional issues. But that speaks to the fact that that's why this can take this amount of time. It's not necessarily that there's a, if we have technical issues, we work very quickly to resolve them. But this is the timeline that these types of projects can typically take. It isn't a matter of a delay so much as this, given the opportunity to collect all this information from all the available contractors to come up with a real compliance picture for the project at completion.
This is Gillian. I just wanted to respond to that. We were not provided that opportunity when the construction was happening or right thereafter. It wasn't until the hearing that we had, I believe, in November or October, that opportunity came up to us. And as I said, at that time, it was just too much time had passed to go back and collect all that data.
Okay, any other questions, board?
Madam Chair, I'd like to loop back to what you said at when you turned it over to questions and comments from the board as to the fact that we're starting to see these cases, these appeals based on judgments of different departments within the city. And we've had a lot of discussion today that in previous cases, we've thought that it was a lot of back and forth that probably should have happened before it came before us. So I just wanted to reiterate your comment on that. And I guess I had a question also to the appellant. If you could give us, if you're going back to phase 1, phase 2, which goes back to 2019 and 2020, if you could explain to us the climate of subcontractors that might have been available, the requirements and restrictions on work being done on construction sites at that time. And I think probably also to the city, the requirements on subcontractors and the trades to meet the requirements for the city to be considered as a minority or low income or women-owned business, so that that goes to the ability for those tradespeople to be able to fulfill the city requirements, particularly during 2019, 2020, 2021, to be able to work for, to be able to be considered a minority or women-owned or low-income contractor that would even qualify to be reporting on this project. So questions to both the appellant and the city on that, and I'll let you respond.
Sure. This is Gillian Hall. I can go first. That's a great question. And we had actually, as part of our materials, had submitted some SNPs from the NHB that they had produced. I think everyone's aware, since the recession, there's been a significant labor shortage that we've been dealing with repeatedly, and it was just made worse by the pandemic. We still, to this day, have struggles with trade availability. It has been an ongoing thing, and we've tried to work with the NHB. We've tried to work with the Ohio Home Builders Association in order to do more outreach for trades. But the shortage in trade labor is already working against us. And then some of these CSB, FB, MBE requirements makes it even more difficult to find people because it's just, there's a shortage in general.
Director Mitchell, and I'll respond to the other part of it. We do provide access to our data, our internal database regarding contractors that are certified MBE, FBE, or CSB. We will also provide direct contact with individuals or groups in a particular trade if they ask us for that. So the database is not the only place they can look. They can also bring other contractors who meet the requirement and bring them to the city to be certified, that we will include. So there are a lot of different things that can be done. I think what happens is these processes take a long time throughout the years, construction project, and then we're closing out a project. It's a while later. Not that anything has been laxed, but you have that retainage, you have other different things going on. So we have to see a project through. So if contractors ask us, we will help find contractors, but we don't guarantee that we can find them. And that if you see in this information presented, some of the projects, some of the costs were higher than they expected. So it wasn't that they couldn't find them. Some of the, they were there, but maybe the cost didn't agree with their budget.
And yes, we do go on to the city's list of certified contractors, and we submit bid packages before our projects to everyone on that list. And we get minimal response. And as you know, I think we looked at a slide prior to this in our earlier discussions about what either it was a lack of response or it was too high. There are various reasons that we've been trying to track why that doesn't always work.
Yes. And last thing I'll say about that, this is Tyson Mitchell. Section 188, when you're looking at penalties, good faith doesn't really come into play. Not that I'm trying to be the lawyer for this group, but it doesn't come into play. Significant efforts come into play on the 4% penalty amount. So, good faith efforts are more relevant on Section 187, and that's kind of how we've been proceeding.
Follow-up question to probably the director and then, to the city. So the contractors, subcontractors that you have in your database, would you say that they are mostly small business, being 1 to 5 person businesses? My experience has been that some of these subs are very often 1 or 2 man or person operations. Therefore, they're the people in the field. And so the reporting in any instance might be difficult for them as they're working sometimes, certainly over 8 hours a day. So I'm just wondering what your database shows in terms of the demographics for that. And then the other question I have is, I don't think we've actually discussed a dollar number for the penalty that's being assessed, and I'd be interested to know that number.
I think that was on the slide, but I don't remember. But go ahead with the question, answering the question.
Okay, Mike.
This is again Michael Curry. So we have 580 or so certified Cleveland area small businesses, minority business enterprises, and female business enterprises, and we have around just short of 200 MBE firms if we're just looking at that category. That means they run the gamut. Essentially, we have contractors that are very large and contractors that are very small. I would say a vast majority of our contractors fall into that smaller category. That when we're looking at minority business firms that are certified with us, a lot of them are relatively small shops. And we appreciate that when we're talking about smaller businesses, that adding this compliance obligation is a challenge for them. We work hard to provide the necessary support and assistance with those contractors, but at the same time, we admit that we rely upon our larger partner contractors, our prime contractors, to work with those smaller subcontractors to assist them in submitting this reporting, in making sure that the project stays in compliance, because we appreciate that it is a challenge for our smaller contractors to submit the required reporting that comes along with this city money.
Could you refresh our memory, please, on what the penalty amount is?
Sure. The penalty amount for chapter 188 is $4,800 for phase 3 and $14,029.45 for chapter 187. And the penalty for phase 2 is $6,000 for chapter 188 and $18,825.89 for chapter 187.
Jillian, I'm sorry, could you repeat for?
You just need the 188 number, so because we're not here for 187 right now.
Okay, great.
It would be $6,000 for chapter 188 for Trailside Phase 2.
And 4,800 for the other.
Yes, and 4,800 for Trailside Phase 3.
That concludes my questions and comments, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have one more.
Okay, one more.
And so I think it was Mr. Mitchell, you mentioned, and I'm looking at section 188.02 of the code, subsection 3, that contractors are required to use significant effort to ensure they're complying with the code. And is that, so they have to meet 4% compliance? And here, what percentage did Kenez meet?
Well, and this is Tyson Mitchell. There's out of the 20% Fannie Lewis rule, it's broken down into 16% and 4%. So 16% will be residents, and then 4% will be low income residents. And you can correct me if I mistake this, Mike. The significant efforts test, my understanding, is applied to that 4%.
I see.
The 4%.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Again, Michael Curry, just to clarify, so the penalty for failure to comply with the resident requirement is it's a requirement. There is no effort standard. There's nothing that's applied to that. That only applies to the low income resident standard to provide a little bit of additional flexibility given the challenges with identifying not just residents, but residents that qualify as low income. So that's a significant efforts test.
Thank you. Thank you so much for clarifying that.
Okay, last call. Any other questions, Board?
Yeah, sorry. So there was a hearing and the Kenez team brought the arguments they brought today, and they met with the city. And from the city's perspective, can you describe why you chose to not accept the argument, why you continue to pursue the penalty? What was missing? Just the documentation, the effort? I'm just trying to understand.
This is Michael Curry. So the reason we continued to enforce penalty, we rejected the appeal, was because we believed and we have found that there were not sufficient Cleveland residents to meet the requirement. So regardless of the reporting mechanism, regardless of anything else, we do not believe that there were residents used on the project, and that's at its core. And we have no reporting to demonstrate anything that would disagree to that effect. So the reporting that we did collect for Trailside 2, we have the 3,000 hours or so. We have 3 total Cleveland residents. Of all the hours reported, only 3 hours were by Cleveland residents. And then we have no reporting for Trailside 3. So we had no reporting on Trailside 3, no hours on that, 3 total hours on Trailside 2, no explanation, or that's the wrong way to put it, but essentially no reporting or no evidence that would demonstrate that there were Cleveland residents used on the contract that would bring the project into compliance.
Thank you.
And let me add one little point. There's Tyson Mitchell, and no statement or averment that they would have made the requirement had the system not been down a certain amount of time. Let's keep in mind the system wasn't down continuously, but there was a lag there. But there's no statement that, hey, we would have made it but for this.
Right. One thing I just wanted to address, we were told that that there wouldn't be a penalty enforced right after we completed construction. So that's why we didn't worry about it. We did not receive a penalty assessment until 2 years later for phase 3 and 3 years later for phase 2. So that is once again, why we didn't try to scramble after construction to put this information together, because we have the emails telling us that we were not going to be assessed a penalty.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Well, board, I think we got all the information that we can get today. So with that being said, I'll entertain a motion. If someone's talking, you're muted.
Madam Chair, hearing no further questions or comments, I want to loop back again to the comment that you made that we're getting these cases now appealing different departments, judgments within the city. And the previous cases, we have asked them to go back to the table to try and work this out amongst themselves. That said, we have heard extensive testimony here today. And if it is the wish of the chairperson and the board, we can proceed with a motion, or we can ask these parties to revisit their negotiations on their own. So I'll let you weigh in on that.
I mean, I think we should move with a motion unless, I guess it's really on the appellant if they really feel like they can go back to the board with the city and work something out. But it sounds like the 2 phases that, they want to talk about is like done. So I'll defer to Kenez on that.
I think at this point we would want to move forward with a vote because we've kind of been recycling this issue, and I think just for us at this point we want finality and to be able to move forward.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
We'll move forward with a motion.
Okay. So the motion is to uphold the decision of the city's Department of Equal Opportunity on calendar number 22-219.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please?
Member Brown, I second.
Ms. Brown with the second. Go ahead, call the roll.
Ms. Holzer,
No.
Ms. Roca,
No.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Faith,
No.
Ms. Britt.
No.
So, Madam Chair, the motion fails. Do we want to have another motion?
We do.
Madam Chair, the motion is to accept the appeal of the decision of the City of Cleveland Department of Equal Opportunity on calendar number 22-219. That is to accept the appeal.
To accept the appeal of Kenez.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm confused.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. All right. The motion is to accept the
I think is it to remand this back to the OEO? Is that what you're trying to say?
the appellant
No, not to remand it back. It's
no, not to remand it back. The appellant wishes not to do that. So we are going to, and the vote to deny was voted down. So we are going to accept the appeal of the appellant on the decision of the director of the Equal Opportunity, City of Cleveland Equal Opportunity Office on calendar number 22-219. So the motion is to accept the appeal.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was zoning out. Can I have a
That's okay.
second, please?
Member Brown, I second.
Ms. Brown with the second. Go ahead, call the roll.
Ms. Holzer,
Yes.
Ms. Roca,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
No.
Ms. Faith,
Yes.
Ms. Britt.
Yes.
Calendar number 22-219 has been granted. The decision of the city has been overturned. This will be ratified next week, and we will send the appellant a letter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks everyone for their time today. It's a long one.
Thank you.
All right. Old business 1 through 5 without objection.
Without objection.
Without objection.
Without objection.
No objection.
All right. Motion to end the meeting.
Madam Chair, I motion that we adjourn.
So
All in
moved.
favor?
Just want to let the board members know I won't be here next week. I believe that Maurice will be doing double duty. So
Uh-oh. Drink some
have
coffee,
patience.
Maurice.
You're in trouble now.
So we'll see you on the 17th then.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a
everyone.
good week, everyone.
Liz,
Bye, everyone.
Yep.
have a great time.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
We'll expect pictures.
Definitely.